seen any of the live shows yet is that we just kind of get set up and the audience can watch us get set up and whatnot.
Okay. And
when we're live on Facebook, Behind the Iron Throne on Facebook, boom, it's live. On YouTube, we should be live any second. So somehow I'm going to have to monitor YouTube and Facebook because I don't have Kelly here.
Got it.
So I might have to, maybe I get Andrea on here. Okay, Andrea.
Okay, so the panel I ran was LGBTQ plus relationships and representation in A Song of Ice and Fire. Full title, which I should know, right?
So if I say I met you at the panel of LGBTQ in the Game of Thrones, and I missed the rest of that.
LGBTQ plus.
Okay, so it's TQ.
Mm-hmm. Relationships and representation in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Relationships. And what was that?
Representation.
Oh, representation. In A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. In Game of Thrones.
Ice, Fire. If I butcher that, I'm really sorry.
No worries.
I get hate mail all the time for saying stuff wrong. It's a regular
No.
thing. It really
no.
All right, let's see if I can get my YouTube live and see if that's working.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, this is actually this Get Vocal has made it so easy because everything goes live at the same time.
Oh, that's really good.
Oh yeah, it just makes my life so much easier. And we already have Andrea's here. Kayleen is here. Andrea, if you want to pop into the live show with me, I don't know what happened to Kelly. So if you pop on vocal, I'll drop you in. Thank you, Andrea. John definitely does mispronounce everything. I think you met John at the convention, Jonathan Stomas.
Yeah.
We call him Lord Ductarian because every time we would talk about Beric Dondarrion, he would call him Ductarian, Gungarian, Bungnarian. And
amazing.
So the nickname kind of stuck.
He was the one aggressively cheering for the Starks, right?
You remember that, right? When Brian had his Frey crew? That was hilarious.
I mean, like, partway through, I started just chanting, boil up, mash 'em, stick 'em in a pie. So, I'm not saying that's the new war chant, but it might be.
It might be the new war chant. I'll go with that. All right, we are live everywhere. So, reacted to. Okay, so I'm just pulling up the live video here so I can get the chat from both sides.
Awesome.
And when Andrea pops in, she'll also help. All right, Mama Cheryl says hi. Hello, Mama Cheryl. That's Trin's mom. Sam.
Hello.
Sam's here. You got this, Chris. Thank you, Andrea. Andrea Triggs, you're awesome. We love you. Samantha. That's Cyclicopedia. She's a Game of Thrones expert also, who used to be on the show.
Nice.
Mama Cheryl. Ray. What's up, Ray? Okay. We have a really awesome fan base.
That's really exciting.
What's really exciting is having Nani on here.
Aw, thanks.
Okay, and I left the spot open for, and Andrea's here. She's probably going to jump in a second. Let me turn off this, for some reason I forgot to turn off this dehumidifier. It's going to drive me nuts, and then we'll get started. Usually I'm really on top of this.
It's been a weird week.
All right. All right, let's play the intro music and see what we got here. So Facebook is pretty pretty legit. Let's see who is on YouTube. Okay, and if you have any shout outs you want to do, Kayleen is aggressively cheering for the Starks. It's funny. That was definitely John. Mag H says, "Hey y'all." Yeah, well, I'm going to try to get Nami addicted to podcasting. No, you did not miss this beautiful girl's intro, Mama Cheryl. We're going to do that in just a minute. Very excited to have Nami on this podcast. And there's going to be a little bit of backstory to this. All right, so I'm going to get started. When Andrea pops in, I will leave the spot open. Okay, let's get the music going here. The trials and tribulations.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Warning, this podcast contains explicit language and spoilers. This is Behind the Iron Throne, your unofficial Game of Thrones podcast.
This is my favorite intro of all the podcasts I've ever made. I'm just saying.
Super kick-ass and hype, so definitely
That's a
agree.
good one. And I wish I could take credit for making it, but I actually hired someone to make this for me. I found the music, and I let someone else put it together. The guy was actually a radio announcer. Like, he has the real voice where I'm just playing at it because I'm like, hey, I'm Chris. I'm a podcaster. One of my intros.
Oh man, imagine having like a radio voice, like "Hello and welcome to." Don't see like that doesn't.
Yeah,
doesn't
it's like,
cut
hello,
it.
welcome to. I'll try to do a radio voice for the beginning of this intro. But one of my intros I did was for my original Nerd Theater episode podcast, which I still record. And it's like this weird music, and I'm like, warning, this podcast is full of spoiler, and it sounds so bad. And I have to redo it, but it's kind of bad and it's kind of fun at the same time.
I think you got to keep it just because like it exists now. Like you've done it.
Yeah,
it's
that's
too
a really
late.
good point. And I kind of keep it around. I'll mix it back and forth.
Plus, it works as a bit of nostalgia, I think, because then you get to look back at it and be like, I have a slightly better radio
awesome.
voice now.
Okay, Andrea's here. Andrea,
Hi.
meet Nami.
Hi.
Hi, Andrea.
Nice
to meet
Chris,
you.
by the way, you do have kind of a radio voice.
Oh, she just popped out. I
No.
and right when I was getting I was getting praise. Right when I was getting praise. It's funny.
It was weird. I know.
Mid compliment.
No, just kidding. You won't be having any of those compliments. There'll be no complimenting Chris. No, I said you do have a radio voice.
Thank you.
It's very velvety sometimes.
Oh.
It's not quite like the Allstate commercial guy.
Oh.
Nothing's quite like him or Tone Loc for that matter, but it's good.
That's okay, DJ. Nami is getting some lag, so it's good. There's going to be a small delay when we ask her questions. Just so you know. Whenever we have Andre, can you watch the Facebook chat? I'll keep an eye on the YouTube chat.
So
And whenever
yes.
whenever I have questions or something to interact with the conversation, I'll raise my hand up. So that'll let everyone know that, it's time for another question. And if Andre has one, then I'll lead her into that one. That way there's less interruptions. Go ahead, Andrea.
Is show topic long night? I mean, not long night, Last of the Starks, or a different something or other?
We're still talking about the Last of the Starks, but we're kind of, because Nami's never been on the podcast, and well, she was on we'll get to that, but I want to get her take on the entire season thus far.
Okay.
And I want to brag on her cosplay.
Ooh, do we have pictures?
I don't have any for the live show.
Oh.
But if she has a place she can share them, she could always drop a link. Or they're just going to have to wait and be mesmerized. You could always drop them on the Facebook page.
True that.
Some of them are on the page because John has pictures of you from the convention.
John,
Does
No.
he really?
such a dork.
Oh man, I need those. I've been trying to like find pictures of my Obara, but it's been difficult because all I can find is like derpy things from the musical. So like either I'm like making a horrible face or I'm like trying to stab somebody poorly, and it's just
Well,
you
I can-
cosplayed
Okay.
you cosplayed Obara?
I did. So so Chris and I actually
wait,
met
hold
at
it. Hold that story. We're
IceFireCon.
going to tell it. Let
and-
me introduce you guys, and then we're going to tell that story
Okay.
because that's gold right there.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good to go. I'm going to get started here, and the actual podcast. Thank you, Kayleen. Wow, so nice people telling me I have a nice announcer voice. If I had gold stars to actually
does.
give you, I would throw money at you right now. My head is so big, my headphones don't fit.
I have gold star stickers
That's awesome.
somewhere. Hold on.
That was
Wait
this
a
is like my
second.
favorite face that you just did there.
That's awesome.
That's my favorite.
My goal is to make her addicted to podcasting and to get her to stay on the team as a whenever she can. I'm
If anybody can do it, it's you, Chris.
going to try.
Gold
Oh
stars
wow,
for
you
all
do
of
have
you.
them.
Keep complimenting Chris's
She's
voice
just not
and you'll
lip
get
service.
more.
She has the stars to go with it.
He has it.
No, I have an unfortunate addiction to bullet journaling, which means that I have acquired a binder full of stickers, and it's mildly absurd. I feel like a preschool teacher, and also just a sticker
That's
obsessed child.
Everyone has to have the
Fine.
things that make them happy. It's what it is.
Okay. Here we go.
This is
I'm going
very
to do the
true.
announcements and I'll get everyone introed and I'll talk about the show in 3, 2, 1. Well, hello. Welcome back to Behind the Iron Throne. This is episode 215, recorded May 9th, 2019. And I have got myself a great panel of Game of Thrones enthusiasts, a gaggle of Game of Thrones lovers, a Song of Ice and Fire fans, holy cats, not to mention the awesome people watching live in the different streaming sections. We have BehindTheIronThrone.tv, our YouTube channel. We have people on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Behind the Iron Throne. And of course, at GetVokal, GetVokal.com. And if you go to GetVokal and you get all signed up and you join us there as well, even when we go off the air, there's a little bit of time where we're still on the air on GetVokal. It's a lot of fun. I recommend everyone checking it out, and I'll put a link later on in the live channels for people to check out. So in this episode, we're going to be continuing our conversation with Game of Thrones Season 8. This is our bonus chat episode, plus a special guest. What does that mean? I'm going to tell you real quick. So we got the bonus chat. You guys bring up the topics. You guys ask the questions, and we will try to get to them as long as they're pertaining to this episode for Season 8, Episode 4, 3, 2, or 1. And, of course, if you want to ask some questions about what we think is going to happen in the future. Let me introduce my one of my normal co-hosts. Her name is Andrea. She is amazing. She is the mistress of whisperers. She is my book expert extraordinaire. She is here now live.
It's all true. It's all true. Everything you say. There's no humble in me anymore. There isn't. It's gone.
Well, I'm glad to have you here because I know the audience always asks a lot of book questions. And then when I answer them, they're like, good grief, Chris.
I love our nerds. Our nerds are the best. We have the best nerds in the whole entire community, I swear.
Well, they ask, Chris, did you even read the books? And I say, I listened to them. Not the same thing. Where Andrea has read them multiple times. She has multiple copies and she highlights them. And look at the marks. Look at the bookmark thing. The Post-it note marks. Look at the notes. That's incredible. Yeah.
I don't play.
That's pro. That's pro for sure. But
it's bad.
we have a very special guest tonight. Now, this person is never, well, I say never. This person was on a podcast that I accidentally lost because I'm a jackass. And I felt so bad about it. And I had to have this person back on the podcast. One of my favorite cosplayers, Nami, welcome to the podcast. You're the cosplay, Game of Thrones, all kinds of nerd related extraordinaire.
Wow, I feel like you're totally overselling me there, but at the same time, it's great to be back. And I would like to immediately start with a rebuttal that you're not a jackass. Computers are weird, technology is weird, so of course something had to disappear. So I'm just glad it was me being an idiot versus something better. But yeah, so Chris is right. I cosplay, I read and watch the Game of Thrones, and I'm pretty obsessed with the series. I got Fire and Blood sitting right next to me, and I haven't read it yet because of grad school, but like it's there, it's waiting.
Yes, Andrea, she hasn't read it yet. Your eyes are like, what?
I still have an archive of facts in my head that I'm still pulling out and trying to compile on my notes.
But
Oh man,
listen to it.
are you worried about spoilers from the books, or are you going to read it either way?
oh, absolutely not. I read everything anyway. I'm actually one of the people who spoils for myself, mostly because, in the quest for cosplay, whenever I find a character I want to dress as, which usually happens within 3 seconds of them showing up in any form of media, I immediately Google character name. And you know how people like to do whenever something bad happens to that character, Google suggestions is automatically like character name, death, character name, plot point. So I've been very used to spoiling things for myself, so it's a non-issue.
That's fair enough. Now, we met at Ice and Fire Con 2019, which was a huge event for me. I loved it. It was so much fun. And you did a panel that I didn't get to see you do the other stuff. You did a panel, like when you guys got there, if I remember correctly. And I missed that. And you were also in a show that I missed, the musical I missed. I think I only caught the tail end of that Friday night, I think it was. So I missed a lot of it. So I didn't get to meet you until I think it was Saturday before the big party.
Yeah, so I think we actually ended up meeting on Saturday when I was doing my second panel. And I remember I did the whole panel. Everybody was like super participating, which was awesome. So I actually ran a panel with 3 of my friends who are very lovely people. We ran a panel on LGBTQ plus representation and relationships in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. It was a really cool and informative panel, and like everybody was super into it and participating. And I remember after the panel, we immediately went to the party that happens that night, and Chris approached me and he was like, hey, I saw your panel and it was really important. It was really informative. I really enjoyed it. Also, I do podcasting. You should do podcasting. And so it began.
Yeah,
and as Chris predicted, here I am.
Yeah, thank God, because that was a very informative panel you guys did. Opened my eyes to a lot of things that I hope that I can get you back on here and we can talk more about it. Go ahead, Andre.
I'm really curious about the panel. Is this something that we're going to get a little bit into detail about on the show? Because is it like the LGBTQ community within ASOIF, or is it like, I don't understand.
So it's actually specifically about a panel of members of the LGBTQ community, and we address different ways that the LGBTQ community was represented in the show. So one of the things that I really focused on was Dorne, and how Dorne is kind of like a basis for a very polyamorous culture, and how Ilaria Sand, one of the main characters from Dorne, is represented as a bisexual woman. We also talked about Loras and Renly, and how they are gay characters, but they're not represented as like feminine men, and they're shown as very powerful. And Loras is like, one of the big, like, most kick-ass.
Yeah, he's not a stereotypical pillow biter. He's not a stereotypical pillow biter.
Exactly.
He's pretty, and but there's many pretty people.
Exactly. And one of the big things that we also talked about was how Martin's representation and, the way that he talks about things has gotten a lot better if you look at his representation in the earlier books versus what he brings to us in Fire and Blood. And, well, of course,
Lysanne Omar is a perfect example of a character who could easily be confused about what their sexuality or gender fluidity of, his personal character is. He's a perfect example of that. And he's come leaps and bounds with the way that he adapted his characters moving forward.
Big E says, don't forget Oberyn.
Well, yeah, of course.
He also has a question for you, Andrea. Big E, I'm going to get to that as soon as I can fit it in. But it was a phenomenal panel, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. Like we talked about John Connington. that was brought up as well, which I never even thought. Like I never even thought of that.
Oh, it's
And
so blatant.
yeah, like for you guys, it's like, oh yeah, shit, I see that, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, wow, my eyes are open, and I'm like, wow, am I really that oblivious? Yes, yes, I am. So it was an incredible panel to watch, and I think it was Becca. I got to meet Becca. She was awesome. Ashaya, I got to meet. I knew her from History of Westeros. She was on the podcast before.
She's dope.
Cool. I met, of course, you, Nami, and I think it was Alex.
Ashley.
Ashley. I got that name wrong every single time.
Ashley's actually one of the members of the small council for Ice of Viracon. So she's like part of, putting the convention together and helping run it during the weekend itself.
And it was a lot of fun meeting you there. And we had I praised everyone. I actually met each one of you and said you guys did a great job, and you definitely need to do another panel about that next year. And hopefully you get a male perspective as well. If I knew more about it, I would so join you guys. But I'm pretty, I don't pay it. I guess I'm pretty oblivious to a lot of that stuff. But I enjoyed learning and being a part and being in the audience of that panel. So that was awesome. Not to mention, we got to break down and boogie later on. We got to dance later to some really awesome. You get to see my moves, and I know you were blown away by the thing.
Absolutely.
I could cut some rug. I'll tell you what. I look like a jackass, and I don't even drink really. And Trin was also there, and she got to meet you, and Trin was dancing. It was so much fun. But definitely want to have you back on the podcast. And I know, Andrea, you'll agree with this for sure, to specifically talk more about the LGBTQ relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire. So we're gonna have to do that again. I'm going to have to get you back on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I would love to do that, and I definitely want us to bring this panel to other places and definitely repeat it again. I also do have a few people that I spoke to after the panel who are very informed about LGBTQ issues from a male perspective. So I think it would be awesome to have them on the panel as well for next year. It was really awesome and super fun to run. So
now, before we get into, I want to ask you what you thought about episode 4, but we have a couple questions I want to get to on the YouTube first. And we'll kind of go back and forth with questions, and I want your opinion. And you can answer questions as well, Nami. Feel free to answer as well. I know there's a little bit of a delay, but we'll figure it out. Biggie's question was for Andrea. In episode 1 of this season, Bran was very animate to tell Jon about his heritage. Then he pressed Sam to tell him, do you think Bran saw the future and what Dany is going to do?
So there's this huge debate on whether Bran actually has the ability to see into the future. And it was something that we were going over in the reread book, in the reread group. And I'm a firm believer that, the future is one of those things that Bran has access to. It's just something that he can't alter, without altering things that are happening in the current timeline. So yes, I do think that Bran had seen something that was going to happen in the future. It's pretty much guaranteed when he gives Arya the dagger the last season in the same place that Arya stabbed the Night King in. It's basically all foreshadowing. So everything that's said, everything that's being done at this point is being done with a purpose, with an outcome in mind.
All right, awesome. Jack in the Box also says a question here, and agreed, Chris, saying, Chris, we would love to hear the LGBTQ perspective. So there's already people saying they want to hear this. So it has to happen now. Plus I promised, and I never break a promise. Jack in the Box's other question is about Dorne and this season. I heard they cast an actor to play the new Prince of Dorne this season. What or why and how will that come to play out in the last 2 episodes? And I'm going to take a swing at this real quick, and I don't know if Nami or Andre want to. I'm thinking that even if they do cast an actor to play the new Prince of Dorne, I don't know who it would be. I don't pay attention to a lot of that kind of stuff. I think that the why would be because, Dany's going to need some more allies. And Dorne was supposed to be allied with her before. How will it come into play in the last 2 episodes? I think that this is going to be a little bit of a prediction. I think that they will join forces with Dany sometime in this next episode coming up. I think this next episode is going to be a very large battle that's going to leak over into the last episode, and then we're going to have the finale, the closure. That's kind of where my head's going with that. Nami, did you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I would be thrilled for Dorne to return, considering how the show has absolutely screwed them over up until now. But I think, as Andrea just typed in our chat here in Get Vocal, I think it's possible that it's one of the Danes, because that's kind of the only remaining family in Dorne right now that has even been mentioned in the show, I believe. And, otherwise, maybe they'll try to pull in the Quentin Martell plot a little bit and have Dane show up and be like, oh, look, it's me, Helpful Dorne, your new husband, your ally. And John's going to be like, excuse me?
Like, what? What are you talking about? Andre, did you want to hit on that? You're muted. You're still muted. Unless, did I mute you by accident? And I can't. Oh, wait, I just.
I know what happened.
Wait,
I
no?
had chat going
Oh.
and it was in my way. So, I was actually talking to Gisela about this because I was trying to convince her that the episode wasn't terrible, because she's absolutely against it, because she's just not happy with how it's going. But she doesn't hate it, but she hates it, and I understand that feeling too. But so I was going through the books, and after Nymeria conquered Dorne, she took Nymeros Martell as husband, and they ruled Dorne until Nymeros Martell died. But she had 3 daughters with Nymeros Martell, and her daughters are the one who inherited Dorne after her, not her son, her only son that she had with Davos Dane. So if House Martell is no longer available on the female or the male side through legitimate heirs, it automatically goes to House Dane based on the blood of Nymeria. It would have to be House Dane.
That's awesome. Do you think that they're going to show up in the season? Do you think they're going to show up in the next episode?
I don't think they would have called them if they didn't. I don't think they would have mentioned Dorne as an option, a viable option, if they didn't intend to have some sort of siege outside of King's Landing, with the rest of the 7 kingdoms involved in whatever capacity that they existed.
Fair enough. Did you have anything in Facebook? Any questions or comments that you wanted to read?
Yeah, Eric wants to know, what do we think about the dragon theory that Drogon had babies in next week's trailer? And then he says, Melisandre spoke to Stannis about a stone dragon. I can't remember. And I think that it all sounds really great. And the idea of there being dragon eggs available is something that I would treasure 100%. But I think with 2 episodes left, and the focus actually being the Iron Throne, removing Cersei, and figuring out why the fuck we don't have an answer about the Night King, we don't have time for dragon eggs or whatever. Maybe if they do a flash forward, but it could just be like you said, Chris, and fade to black, and we're all screwed at the very end, So
I hope not.
Who knows?
Kyle did say, does that mean we may see the Dane sword? And then I want to comment on the dragon egg thing.
I don't know. I don't know how much emphasis I'll put on Dawn at this point, considering they didn't care to bring her into the battle for the Dawn. So who knows?
We're running out of time quickly. Very, very quick. So, Nami, do you think that Drogon, when he was flying away and kind of being an unruly child to Dany, was that season 6? That was season 6, right? When
I think it
was it 5? So he's flying away, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, Viserion and Rhaegal were in the pyramid. Do you think that Drogon flew away and laid a hatch of eggs?
I think it's possible. And I think if we're playing towards an end game of continuing the Targaryen line with Jon, I think it makes sense that there are dragon eggs. I don't think that those eggs are currently hatched or available to Dany in any capacity, because I think a big portion of what they're doing in the show is removing all of her resources, which includes her not being aware of these eggs existing in the first place. But I think if we are going to have Jon or Dany on the throne at the end, that these eggs are going to be like an epilogue future type of deal.
Biggie has a question. In season 7, they beat us to the head, and Dany they beat us in the head that Dany can't have children. The whole fandom thought that Dany will get pregnant in this season, but they haven't mentioned it yet. I think D&D dropped this. Do you think, Nami? Do you think that they're going to drop that Dany is actually pregnant from Jon Snow?
I honestly doubt it, because I think it would be, well, I personally think it would just be bad storytelling, because it kind of undermines everything that happened to her with Drogo and with the trauma of losing that child and then losing Drogo all at once and everything that kind of happened there. But I think it's a little too late at this point for them to bring it up, especially because it might be played as like if Dany does go crazy, which is what they seem to be leading to, I think it'll be played as a guilt card against Jon. And poor Jon. I just want him to be happy.
A real quick announcement. Anyone that's listening to Facebook, if you're having issues over there because the stream keeps getting interrupted, Facebook is a real pain in my big old butt. So if you're having an issue, go over to behindtheironthrone.tv. And Andre, could you type that into the chat so people can see it? Thank you so much. And that way you guys can get over. The stream is way, way better on YouTube. I don't know what it is. Facebook just does not like me. Damn you, Facebook. So come on over to the YouTube. And thank you for everyone that's popped in here so far. Very, very cool. While Andrea is doing that for me, you're an angel, by the way, Andrea. Nami, while we have you here, we like to rate our episodes with swords. So it's 1 out of 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. If you had to rate this last episode, episode 4, what would you rate it? 4.
That's a 4. I'm holding up a 4.
You and my sister. She hated it. She hated this episode. A lot of people, I saw a lot of comments. A lot of people did not like this last episode.
I just liked it a lot. I thought it was lazy storytelling coupled with fan service in order to satiate us and to distract us from the laziness. So to me, there was so much more that they could have done with the storytelling. There were so many better directions they could have taken it, but they just gave us a lot of tropes. Once again, we got the bastard becomes the Lord, which, you know, I am a hardcore Gendry fan. I love Gendry and Arya. I would have been so happy with that, except it was just presented so lazily. And then we have, you know, salty Dany in the corner because Jon has friends. And then we finally get Brienne and Tormund, which is yay. And then, we finally get Brienne and Jaime. And I will say that the one good thing about the episode was Tormund complaining to the Hound, who was having none of it. And that moment just made me giggle. And I also liked how Tormund just kind of let it go. That was a good man right there. But they gave us our Brienne and Jaime, and then Jaime runs off and ignores 8 seasons of character development to go after Cersei again. And you know, it was just a lot of stuff like that. Jon literally goes to the side and is like, bye, buddy. Doesn't even pet you because apparently CGI is too expensive to pet a dog, but not to ride a dragon. And, you know, it was all of that. And of course, the thing that really pushed me over the edge, quite literally, was Missandei getting her head chopped off and thrown over the edge of the barricades because, once again, we're sacrificing Dany's supposed best friend, who we've never actually seen have best friend interactions because of lazy writing. And we're just supposed to believe that Dany's suddenly upset about this, and then Grey Worm's upset, and then once again we just have the dead brown girl fueling plot.
Who was gonna leave her anyways?
I know, right? I thought it was just a lot of laziness, and it was frustrating because it really could have been a truly amazing episode. And once again, Dany continues to show a complete disregard for how battle strategy works in any regard. Because I, for one, could say, I don't know, if you have dragons, maybe fly up really high and see if there are boats hiding somewhere with, I don't know, perhaps scorpion missiles or whatever those dumb arrow
Ballista.
things are.
Totally flew. I feel like she totally flew into that. And Andrea Triggs in the YouTube says John and Ghost had a private love session. I have to believe that. I'll tell you, there are so many people that were disappointed that John hugged so many people goodbye, and then he looks at Ghost and just gives him like a little nod. Like what a shit way to go. And if you look at our Facebook page, I had posted so many funny memes about this.
He fucks bears. Bears, Dad.
Oh, you got it.
I think that everyone who has a low score for episode 4 needs to literally go back and listen to Tuesday's podcast, because I feel like I've seen it from such a different perspective than almost every single person that I've talked to about it, because I've spent such a long time investing and knowing the characters, like actually like feeling like I know them personally, like they're my best friends. You know what I mean? Like I have an intimate relationship. I have a kindred spirit to Jon Snow. I mean, like there's parts of him that I just get his melancholy, like on a level that people don't understand. I mean, he's my soul animal. He's my spirit animal. So I mean, like I get him on like on a ridiculous level, but everything that Dany's going through right now, like I get that too. And so when people reduce her to the idea of the Mad Queen status just because she's literally losing it right now and she's entitled to losing it right now, I don't think that's lazy writing, and I don't think that anything about the episode was fan service. I don't think that I've met one fan so far who thought this was the best fucking episode I've ever fucking seen in my life. And for the specific reason that nobody feels like that, and the fact that every single moment of it, I'm just like this. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was never so shocked in my life watching an episode of Game of Thrones as I was with episode 4. And for that reason alone, I mean, it deserves credit. And sure, there were things that Dave and Dan always can do better because it's fucking Dave and Dan, you know, but I highly suggest, if you haven't listened to Tuesday's episode when we finally figure out where it's at, or you have time on YouTube, you should listen to it, because I literally took myself out of fan mode and put myself into like, these are people, you know, how do we figure these people out? And it was, I think that I definitely think the episode should get better credit than it did, especially the Jaime arc, and the Gendry thing, because yeah, that was all there for a reason.
I'm actually looking to see if for some reason I'm still having issues with the media server. I'm trying to get 214. I emailed them today and they said they were trying to fix why 214 didn't show up. I don't know, but talk about driving me absolutely crazy. What am I paying for? Anyway, okay. Eric popped over to YouTube and was asking Andrea about the two theories. The one, Drogon gave birth to the new dragons. Is that what Euron sees in that trailer? Is that possible? And the second would be, or maybe Gendry builds Drogon dragon armor. Now, I gotta say, Gendry's I like Gendry because not only can he row a boat like there's no tomorrow, because he's rowing his boat. Number 2, he runs as fast as fucking Forrest Gump. He is literally Forrest Gump of Game of Thrones. So he's a pretty cool dude. Can the dragon support armor, I guess?
Yes, so actually, yes.
Go ahead. Those are your questions.
Aegon the Conqueror's dragons actually were armored. There are quite a few dragons. Even if you look through World of Ice and Fire, there are quite a few dragons that are actually armored. So yes, they actually have had dragon armor before. The problem is I don't really know if Gendry has time for all that unless they plan on a long, protracted siege of King's Landing that we're going to see over the course of an episode and a half. You know what I mean? Which is quite possible, which will translate into an episode and a half, but end up being months. Who fucking knows? Because sometimes it happens like that. But especially with Jaime traveling from Winterfell to King's Landing and Jon traveling from Winterfell to King's Landing, I mean, months and months are passing. You know what I mean? So not so much for Dany, who was on a ship, takes like 2.5 weeks or something like that to travel by ship from White Harbor to Dragonstone. So time-wise, a lot of time is about to pass in a relatively short amount of time, 2 episodes. So it's quite possible that, yeah, he might be able to forge armor. The problem with that is that those ballista are so strong and they're so powerful that I think that they can pierce regular armor. So unless Bran comes up with the recipe for Valyrian steel and they get some spellbinder there to work it and make it from like fresh, then I don't think that's a viable solution. No, I don't think that those are dragon baby eggs. I don't think that you're seeing that. I think what you're seeing is the idea that Dany should have done what she should have done from the very beginning, which was she should have taken Drogon up until he was a speck on the moon or the sun, just like Egon the Conqueror did when he took Harrenhal. And then he should have came down from very high, and he should have roasted them before they had a chance, because what those blisses don't do is they don't aim straight up in the air. They can aim at an angle. They can 360-degree rotate, which is why swinging around from the other side wasn't a viable option for her either. She needed to go up out of their range and then come back down where they couldn't access her, and then maybe from behind if she wanted to. But she hasn't been flying her dragons correctly ever since she arrived in Westeros, and she should have never taken 2 riderless dragons into battle ever. She should have never risked them like that, because they don't have that connection. And so I think that the reason why she's lost them is because of her arrogance. Did you not see 3 dragons flying above head when you came in? Do you really? I need your help. She was arrogant, and her arrogance is costing her. So as far as dragon eggs go, yeah, I read the theory. I think it's possible that Drogon could have taken on the identity of Daenerys, being that she's his rider and she's female, and dragons are neither male nor female. It's quite possible that Drogon laid eggs. I actually think that it's highly more likely that Viserion is the one who left behind eggs, because in the books, Viserion is more associated with fertility, the Cypher, the moon, the Ouroboros. There's just so many female aspects to Viserion's character that it makes more sense that Viserion, who actually burned through his chains and made a lair up in the rock in the catacombs in Meereen, actually laid a clutch of eggs there than anybody. So if there are dragon eggs, in my opinion, they're probably in Meereen in the catacombs.
Makes sense to me. Okay.
I think another good point is that what you're talking about with Dany's arrogance. And I think a part of what I see happening is that even if Gendry would be capable of making that dragon armor for Drogon, I think Dany has lost so much so quickly that I don't think she's going to be able to.
She's not going to want to.
Because Gendry isn't in that initial group with her. If Gendry's coming, he's with Jon. And so, you know, I think Dany has just seen Missandei die. She just lost Rhaegal. She is ready for blood. She's ready for fire and blood. And I don't think she has the ability to wait now, because once again, that arrogance is pushing her, and that anger now, and that sadness and loss is pushing her. And I think that makes her very dangerous, but also even more reckless, which unfortunately makes Cersei's job a lot easier.
Because what did Syria say? You're with your trouble.
Now, in the chat, people are saying Valyrian steel or Valyrian armor, and Eric even says vibranium armor, which is funny.
That works.
I'm all for that. Or adamantium, you know.
Let's just get some mithril chainmail.
That was my next call. Gold star to Nami. But what I think is funny is that, you know, I even posted a picture of it, even though the picture was really bad. Like the dragons look like a cross between a dolphin, a whale, like a whale, and a flapping like sock puppet. And I drew this, and I found this meme, and it's basically like Drogon. They could have flown around the back of the ships, where there's no scorpions, and of course you guys already mentioned like coming down like death from above. And you guys are right. Dany is not in her right headspace. She just saw Missandei die. You know, Rhaegal dead. I mean, she's in a bad way. They literally just fought the living dead, for Christ's sakes, and they're not fully rested. You know, she found out about Jon Snow. I'm surprised she hasn't fully cracked and gone nutters yet, quite honestly. And I'm not saying. Go ahead, Tommy.
I truly wish that in that whole conversation, when they're discussing the Battle of King's Landing, that she had listened to Sansa, or at the very least, Missandei had listened to Sansa and told her to wait and told her to rest, because she genuinely needed that rest. But once again, like Andrea said, it's that arrogance. And it's also that fear now that Jon's going to take everything that belongs to her, even though, you know, we know Jon's character, we know he
Right,
doesn't
and
want
now
it.
it's also a race.
but-
It's a race for in time for her too. If she claims it before Jon does, then that's one more thing that she doesn't have to worry about. You know what I mean? Even though Jon's told her, "I don't want it," she
Mhm.
doesn't trust him at this point, and nothing that he's done at all has changed whatsoever to give her any indication that he's a man any less than his word. But she's lost everything, and everything is spiraling out of control for her, and so she's fighting to keep control, and that's pushing people who she knows
Mhm.
she can depend on to either break or stay, you know what I mean? And she's got that dominating personality type, and
Yeah.
so
I think one of the biggest losses that we had this season was that Sansa and Dany are in such different headspaces now that, you know, I see them and I see their interactions, and all I can think is they could have been the best of friends. They could have been advisors to each other. Sansa could have been Dany's hand. Like, they would have destroyed
right.
all of their enemies. But because of how they met and where they met, they're in such a conflicting relationship that now they're just at each other's throats. And it's disheartening to see, really, because you could imagine like the power duo that they could have been.
Right. What a lost opportunity. But I think that the way that they've been writing those two characters, and some people don't like it, the way that Sansa and Dany are interacting, but it kind of makes sense from the way the two characters, I guess it kind of does and kind of doesn't. I feel like that Dany that I knew from Marine is not the Dany that's in Westeros. Like, it's almost like a different character.
Mm-hmm.
And Sansa, I can understand because Sansa's been through this crazy journey. And Sansa has grown. And if you listen to the podcast, anybody, you know that how much I hated Sansa from like season 1 to 5. And she had changed. And it's amazing what this show has done to these characters, you know. And now Sansa is a very strong, I don't want to say Littlefinger-ish, but I don't know any other way to put it. She's able to scheme and protect her assets, and she's a lot smarter than she's ever been. Like she had said to the Hound, "I'm not the little dove anymore."
Yeah, if I would have stayed.
I think she's actually become more than Littlefinger. I think she's become the perfect blend of Cersei and Tyrion.
I think that we do Sansa as a character a disservice when we constantly bring her back or reduce her back to being specifically Littlefinger or specifically Cersei or specifically Olenna Tyrell or any of these other people who she's encountered along her journey. Sansa she is a little bird, and what do birds do? They sing songs, and what typically the songs that they sing are songs that they've heard before, right? So they repeat the things that they've heard, they mimic, they adapt to their environment. So this is what Sansa does. She sings her songs, and her mother taught her that a woman's courtesies are her best weapons. So Sansa is the perfect lady, and she's also the perfect politician because she's learned how to sing all the right songs to all the right people. But we do her a disservice when we reduce her back to being just a Littlefinger. The issue I think that most fans or viewers have with Sansa is that you really never know what her intentions are because of the influences that she's had. You never know, are they pure? Are they self-serving? And the thing about it is that while Sansa's intentions might be pure, they're also self-serving as well. For example, she wants Jon to sit the Iron Throne because she thinks that Jon's going to be the best possible option, but also because she wants to make sure that she continues to be the Lady of Winterfell.
Makes sense to me.
It's a double-edged sword.
Did you have anything in Facebook? Any comments pertaining to this conversation, or any questions?
No, because the Facebook is so dead right now. There was literally 3
that's
people in there.
true.
I just shut it down, and I'm over here on
Okay.
YouTube just paying attention to comments, but listening to you guys as well.
If you guys are in Facebook and you didn't hear the announcement earlier, head over to YouTube, BehindIronThrone.tv. For some reason, Facebook's being a real bastage. Before we start talking about episode 3, because Nami, that was incredible. And I've been telling this story, and I'm sure the audience is getting tired of it. I even had audio from when we watched it live, and people were screaming, and it was fantastic. But before we get there, Kayleen has a question. Kayleen says, does anyone else feel let down by Varys' development? From season 1, he's been moving pieces that kept Dany safe and helped lead her to the throne. he's too quickly losing faith in Danny. So, yeah, I think that I'm a little disappointed with Varys' story so far, at least this last season. Um, he's been trying to move pieces around, but what's good about now is that you get to see Varys say, "I'm for the realm, and I'm dead serious." Where people were saying he might have been a Blackfire, people are saying that he might have been treacherous for some dumb reason. He's thinking about treason for, well, I think is a good reason for the people. He thinks that Danny is losing her mind. He sees, I think that scene when he's looking at Danny, he sees Mad Queen. I don't think that she's going that route. I hope she's not, but I think that's what Varys is afraid of. And he flat out tells her in the Dragonstone when they were having that little mini war council or that little meeting. He says, "I'm not really happy with this. I'm not happy with what's going on here." And he's telling her the truth, just like he said he always would. So, Varys is, what is he going to do is what I'm kind of curious about. But go ahead, Andrea.
So I was going back through the comments, and they're talking about Varys and where he's been. So in season 1, he was reporting to Robert Baratheon about Targaryen through Jorah Mormont. Robert Baratheon ordered that Daenerys and her child be assassinated, and Viserys too. Although Daenerys had beaten Robert's assassins to Viserys at that point, he didn't know. But when Robert changed his mind and told Ned to try to change it, Varys said the bird had already flown. But what he didn't tell Ned was the bird flew, but it also said, "Don't let them poison her. I want you to watch her. I don't want her harmed." Varys only wanted Daenerys to be observed. He didn't want her to be harmed, but he had to follow through with Robert's orders as well. But he also safeguarded to make sure that Daenerys actually wasn't harmed in the process. So it was kind of like, yeah, he was playing both sides of the fence, right? And then at some point, Daenerys walks out of a burning pyre and she has 3 dragons, and Jorah decides, I'm not going to tell on her anymore, right? Well, because he meets Quaithe and Karth, and she's like, basically, I know you betrayed her, and are you going to do it anymore? And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. He fell in love with her. She reminds him of Lyness, and, he's a creep. It is what it is. And so he became faithful to her. Now, this whole entire time, I think that they're trying to play it like Varys has been trying to get Daenerys to have an army to come back to Westeros and reclaim the Iron Throne because she was the best possible hope. However, we do know in the books that if everything would have worked out the way they thought things were going to work out, Daenerys was never going to go to Westeros because the Dothraki would have never sailed in the first place, and they would have never taken Viserys there in the first place anyways. So they wanted at some point Daenerys to die. They wanted to, not Daenerys to die, Daenerys to end up being in the Temple of the Dosh Khaleen or something or other, or out of the way, or then at some point they intended to marry her off to Aegon, who is a fake Blackfire. He's a real Blackfire because it is what it is. So it wasn't that pure, but in the show, they've moved away from the Blackfire plot and they've moved towards, reestablishing Targaryen rule, which is why Varys went on to insisting that Tyrion going with Illyrio to go to young Griff and yada, yada, yada. So they cut out that whole entire plot line right then and there. But now, the one thing that he has in common with the show from the show and the books is that he's always said, no matter what, that he serves the realm. He doesn't serve one specific faction or another. He serves the people. So if the people are suffering under a specific ruler, even if it's somebody like Rhaegar Targaryen, who thousands of people were dying for during the rebellion because he fell in love with the wrong person, he's going to make sure that person doesn't succeed to the throne. And right now, Dany is presenting herself as a bad option.
In the getvocal.com chat, Ashley Jordan, welcome, says, do you think his betrayal would be from the treasonous remarks against her, or possible that he tipped off the Iron Fleet? So is it possible that Varys tipped off the Iron Fleet? And Kyle responded by saying, possibly both. It's interesting that Euron was at Dragonstone, but also Dragonstone is very close to King's Landing. So there is that too. They could have been patrolling the whole time. And, Qyburn has little birds. So he knows that there's movement. Nobody keeps secrets here. Go ahead, Nami.
I think it's definitely if right now we're talking about betrayal, I think it's definitely the treasonous remarks, because what we're seeing right now is the very beginnings of Varys' doubt. And I think if we had that earlier, like Varys said, he was always going to be upfront and straight with Dany. And I think the fact that he mentions it now is because this is the first time he's having those thoughts. So I don't believe that he tipped off the Iron Fleet. I believe that Cersei at least seems to be presenting herself as a more effective strategizer, as a more strategic mind than Dany is. And I think it makes sense for her to have Euron patrol around Dragonstone in the first place, because obviously if Dany came back, that's a great place for her to use as their base of operations, because it is the historical seat of Targaryen, of the House Targaryen. So
That's an excellent point. And I want to kind of piggyback off what you said and talk a little bit about Cersei here. Cersei killing Missandei broke my heart. And I know I got a lot of people in the last episode were like, oh my God, you guys didn't talk about that enough. And we're probably going to talk about it a little bit more now. That was heartbreaking. And you mentioned that before. And Missandei, yelling Dracarys, and I put a meme up that said when she says Dracarys, and the dragon's like, it has like a picture of the Drogon, and at the bottom it's like the Siri like squiggly mark, and it's like, sorry, that voice does not recognize, or something like that. Because I said on the I think it was the last episode, that when that happened, thank you, Ashley, that was pretty funny. That when she said that, I was afraid that Drogon was going to lift up and head to King's Landing, that wall, and get hit by all the scorpions, and then that would be another dragon down. Thank God that didn't happen. So he must have been hard of hearing, or maybe it was just because it wasn't a recognized voice command. But that was heartbreaking. But if you look at Cersei's been very interesting. She's a very calculated character, and a lot of people in previous podcasts argue with me. I'm not going to mention his name. Okay, I will. You push my buttons. Jonathan Stoma Starklover said, oh, no, Cersei is not a bad villain. She's nobody. She's going to be beaten easily. She has been kicking ass for a long-ass time.
I agree. John has...
And she's still here, right?
He has underestimated her.
Here.
Yeah.
Right? And the Night King is not.
I see that Lannister shirt you got there.
Yeah, like, am I... I'm going to say, am I surprised that the Night King wasn't the big bad in the end? Absolutely. Am I upset that it's Cersei? Absolutely not. Because she has built herself up. She has pulled herself up by her bootstraps. She, like Dany, in a way, has sacrificed everything that she loves for this throne, and she intends to keep it. And she has been keeping it for the majority of this show, through her husband, through her son, and her other son, and through herself. And I think it's a disservice to Cersei to say that she's not worthy of being the final villain, because yeah, I thought it was going to be the Night King as well. It makes for good TV, but the fact that it's Cersei makes so much sense, like story-wise, and it makes me so happy, because she's been the story of the person who was underestimated and the underdog, and despite always being under somebody else's heel, she's pulled herself up to be the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and she has maintained the strategic ability to hold on to that seat, whereas characters who have so many better resources haven't even come close.
Andrea.
Yeah, because
Andrea?
she freaking knows that when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. That's it. Like, she knows that if she's dying anyway, she's taking everyone with her. That's why every single monarch before her wants to live. She's like, okay, well, if I'm dying, everyone's going with me. That's why, because Cersei gives no F-U-C-K-S. None.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I actually enjoyed about this episode was the fact that Cersei brings all of the people of King's Landing into the keep. It's such a horrifying move, but it's such a Cersei move, and it's so strategic and so good, and it's what you see incredibly lacking in Dany. And Jon
Except
as well.
she just let Arya and the Hound inside the Red Keep.
Nobody can stop Arya.
You just opened
Arya's
the doors
smart.
and said, come on in.
Ninja.
Come on in, homie.
She is literally a spider monkey.
Come on in, little
homie.
assassin.
Come on, let's do it.
She would just jump over. She would just jump over the wall. You know, she's been like, "Whoop," over the
Oh
wall she
yeah,
goes.
no. Walls don't stop her. She basically killed an eldritch being. Like she's got everything now.
I gotta say that there's so many funny things going on in the chat. One person was saying, Alyssa was saying, John, talking about Jonathan Stomos, Darklover from the podcast, thought that Cersei was going to die in season 6. He predicted that so many times. That's funny. Let's see. Somebody said that Cersei is like the Joker in Gotham. Cersei is to Westeros what Joker is to Gotham. That was from Carlito's Way. That's funny. And a lot of people are saying, like John Surbeck is saying, Arya is Batman. Andrea Triggs is saying, yes, she's diabolical. I'm talking about Cersei. Cersei's been an amazing, I think another amazing character. You hate her, you love her, like her walk of shame. You know, that was like one of those moments where even though she was such a bad character, I felt so sad for her. And then for her to turn around, and now I'm like, oh my God, somebody kill this girl. Go ahead, Andrea.
Speaking of Walk of Shame, that was the last episode that David and Dan produced before episode 6. So just prepare yourself for that. Just
awesome.
Throw that out there for you.
Oh God.
So, Nami, I tried to explain to our audience, and I even had audio of season 8, episode 3, with some of the reactions. And you were there with me live in that room. You got to hear the fans' reactions. And the funny thing about a lot of the Ice and Fire Con family are lovers of the books, not so much of the show, especially Tara. And to hear the crowd, even get jazzed was pretty incredible. You know, from Melisandre lighting the swords to, of course, the end where Arya, you know, does her spider monkey ninja badassery. Because I didn't get to keep that recording we talked about before. What would you give that episode a sword rating?
So on the night that we actually did this, I gave it 8.5 out of 10. And I remember this very clearly because it was one of those episodes that even though I look at it and I think about every strategic decision that happened in that. And so I have 2 ratings for this, let me say. If I was rating season 8, episode 3, purely on strategy, I would give it a 0 out of 10. Because I'm sorry, who fights an army of undead zombies and puts their army outside to be slaughtered? And just so many strategic issues. But that's just always been the case with Jon and Dany. But overall, I think the episode was amazing. And I think it was also one of those episodes that worked really well to be watched at Ice and Fire Con, because obviously we do have a very large book following, and amongst that book following, we have a very large group of people who've given up on the show for various reasons. And I think it was just such a hype show, and it really had you on the edge of your seat, because even if you aren't invested in the show story anymore, you still like these characters. And the fact that they're all in such immediate danger just brought everybody together, so you could real-time gasp and worry and scream when something happened to somebody that you cared about or you thought something was going to happen. And it just had so many heart-stopping moments like that. It was impossible not to get sucked into the exuberance and fear and excitement and joy of the crowd. It was a really otherworldly experience, because I know Chris has talked about it so much, but there were like 100 people in that room, more than 100, all Game of Thrones fans, like reacting in sync, like gasping when Lyanna gets grabbed, like the horror struck, like, ooh noise when you hear her ribs crack, the shrieks of like joy as she stabs one in the eye, like Arya getting grabbed by the throat, everybody's like, you could hear everyone just go and like everyone's shock, and how we just stopped for a moment, and then she stabs the Night King, and we had a standing ovation for parts of the room. Like it was absurd, and it's one of those nights that I will not ever forget, because, you know, I'm at the point where I'm kind of just watching the show now because I'm like, yeah, the show's ending, this kind of sucks, but I'm still more invested in the book fandom. But that episode will always be the best Game of Thrones episode for me, just because of the room environment and watching it with so many fans who cared so much.
totally agree with that.
Amazing.
And I'm feeling the same way. And at least 50-60% of that was because we were in a room with fellow people. I mean, I enjoyed the episode for what it was. When I go back and watch it, I definitely saw a lot of loopholes, plot holes, and issues, strategic issues, and things like that. And we're going to end up breaking that down even further at the end of season 8. We're going to go back and kind of go over everything.
So much
when that's
fun.
over. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to break it down like there's no tomorrow. And some people are going to laugh, some people are going to cry. But I
So
will say that not only did we get the standing ovations and the atmosphere was amazing, but Jonathan Stomos Starklover was so fucking drunk that midway through he actually projectile vomited onto the stage
oh my
twice.
gosh.
Twice.
Oh no.
Staring at it, and
Oh.
I elbow him, and I'm like,
Oh,
he's next
no.
to me, I'm like, John, are you okay? And he goes, ah. It was, and then he tried to clean it up. Poor
Oh.
John. That's right, Ashley. Poor John.
Oh
But he made it
no.
through the whole episode. And go ahead, Nami.
And I think the most absurd thing about John vomiting like that is that I was sitting right behind Chris and John. And I was so absorbed in the episode that I didn't even notice until I just saw that John wasn't in his seat anymore. And I was like, oh, hey, where'd Angry Stark Man go? Like, I don't see him anymore.
Yeah, he was the Angry Stark
He gets
man.
so passionate about the Starks. And I'm a Stark fan, but I also respect the fact that Jon Snow is not a Stark. And so I try to be objective about every single character. But Chris, did I ever tell you guys my Arya bringer theory? Everyone keeps calling her Arya High, but she's not Arya High, she's Lightbringer.
No, I haven't heard the theory yet.
Okay, so I figured out how Arya was able to kill the Night King.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so Robb Stark was the king in the North, right?
Mhm.
He wasn't dethroned, he was killed. When he was killed, the Lannisters gave Winterfell and the North to the Boltons as lords, but not as kings, right? So they were never dethroned. He was just killed. So Arya, when he was killed, was still a princess. However, when Arya was made a princess, Arya was also a boy. She was airy. She was I can't remember all her names that she had when she was in Harrenhal and on the King's Road, etc. But she was also a boy at the time. Arya is the most sexually ambiguous character, arguably, aside from any faceless man that you have in the books, that you have. So when she meets Syra Farrell, he tells her, "Pick it up, boy. I'm not a boy, girl. It doesn't matter. You're a sword, right?" There's your first clue. Arya is a freaking sword, right? So the word in High Valyrian for prince or princess is there's no gender. It's not gender specific, right? So just like the faceless men, they're not gender specific. So Arya is the physical manifestation of a non-gender specific prince or princess, right? That was promised. Not of ice and fire, just of ice, right? Maybe. We don't know if the Starks have Targaryen blood in them from back with the Dance of Dragons. That's speculation at this point. We'll never know unless they decide to go there at some point. But what we do know is that she was still technically a princess at the time. Then Jon Snow is named king in the North. She's at the time considered his sister, so then she goes back to her princess status, and she's already a faceless man. Now, Arya was born amidst salt and smoke. She was born amidst smoke the night that she saved Jack and Nagar from the fire when he was in that cage, right? She was in a castle that was burning. And if you read the books, it sounds like a dragon is being born from the flames in that castle when she's escaping through a tunnel in the ground, right? Then she goes all the way to Braavos, which is an island in the Narrow Sea that's surrounded by salt, and she drinks the poison water that's in the Temple of the Faceless Men, and she gives her life where she's reborn as a servant of the many-faced God. So Arya is reborn amidst salt and smoke, right? And she's not a boy, and she's not a girl. She's no one, and she's a sword, right? And she's Melisandre's third attempt at forging a hero.
Yeah. Holy shit, you're right. It makes sense. Andrea,
Oh my.
it's good. This is why you get the big bucks.
Right. All of them.
Listen, I have heard so many theories, and usually I just immediately wash them down the drain. But God damn, Andrea.
If I rationalize it, and this is what I try to do. Me and Chris had this conversation through text message the other day. He had just gotten back from the con, and I was like, I assume you're doing this, and he was like, you're a mind reader, and I was like, I just rationally try to think about what the next step would be, right? So if I rationalize it enough and try to figure out how it works, and you go back and you rewatch and you figure out all of the things you know about somebody and the characters, and like I said, I think that I know the characters intimately, like friends, like people that I've grown up with at this point, or they've grown with me because I've gotten to know them as they grow. You know what I mean? So it's easier for me to rationalize the facts. And so I went over it and I thought about it, and then all of a sudden it hit me, boy, girl, you're a sword. And I was like, she's a fucking prince or a princess.
Andrea,
It is.
Andrea is saying, you're blowing my mind. Yay, Andrea. Alyssa says, wow. And the message was retracted. I think she's saying you're blowing minds right now. Is what I think is going on.
I could be wrong, but if I rationalize it enough, everyone was like completely stunned. How did Arya do it? How did she fit into this? And Dave and Dan are like, Arya and Jon are arguably the most important characters. Well, maybe Arya was always meant to kill the Night King. Maybe Jon's meant to do something else. Maybe Jon's actual purpose of ice and fire is something completely separate, and it still has to do with the Night King, which we just don't know because it was over too fucking soon. It's not done yet. So
yeah,
yes, girl, mind blown. Oh, I think we lost Nami.
She'll be back.
Yes, girl, mind blown. Mag says, do you hold on, Nami, I'll get you back in. It says, they'll ever address it on the show?
I think that they don't have a choice but to. I think that it's going to be our closure because it's going to be bittersweet. I think that all of it's going to come back out in the 6th episode, no matter whatever happens with Dany either being the fire aspect of it or the ice aspect. I was talking to, I can't remember the fan I was talking to on the page last night about the moon traveling too close to the sun and drinking its rays and breaking, and from it being 1,000 dragons being born, right? Essentially the moon being an egg, or representing femininity, and Dany is highly associated with the moon, and her character is constantly being referenced as a moon, while Jon is always being referenced as a hidden sun, right? So now you have Dany, who's always been represented by fire in Essos. You know everything about her. She's a mother of dragons. She walked into fire. She's basically impervious to fire, etc. She goes and she travels too close to the hidden sun. Ghost, every time he thinks about Jon, he always says the sun that's hidden in the man cave, basically. The sun that's hidden, but he calls it the S-U-N, not the S-O-N, right? So in Ghost mind, he's not differentiating between the difference between sun and sun, but he's the hidden sun, while Dany in Jon's dreams is always being, the moon is calling to him. The moon is calling to him. And so you have Drogo's pyre, right? It's a circle with a line through it. And then you have the Night King's swirl, right? With the swirl, we had in episode 1, light on fire, right? So in my opinion, that automatically is the representation for the symbol of fire, right? Then you have Dany, who is the circle, right? With the line through it, which is basically an egg that traveled too close to fire and cracked open. And from it, dragons were born. And literally, they were born when in Drogo's pyre. So you have Dany, who's actually the representation of the moon. So that circle is the freaking moon. So Dany is actually, if you think about it, the moon is ice and the sun is fire. So it might be that Dany ends up being the inverse in the end, and Jon is the inverse in the end as well, where Jon is the ice, is the fire representation in the end, and she's the ice representation in some capacity. So I think that, yeah, it has to be addressed. It's leading up to that the whole time. Go for it, Chris.
Sounded like you had dogs fighting. It sounds like there's a dog fight
Possibly.
somewhere.
Or somebody walking
In the
past.
meantime, we have a lot of comments I want to get to. Because we'll start with Ashley in Get Vocal. Andre jamming that puzzle piece into the missing hole, and she goes on to say, I want to believe. Biggie says to Andrea, the Night Wolf killed the Night King. Alyssa says, nope, that's something that she was talking to Meg about. Andrea says, Andrea, what do you think Jon's purpose is? And of course, we have Robert asking at Andrea, I started reading the first book and I'm about halfway through. So far, it's almost beat for beat as season 1. If I skip to book 2, will I miss anything of importance? Now, I'm gonna answer that real quick, because I skipped book 1. I skipped book 1, recorded about 150 podcasts, and then I went back and read book 1, because I figured that it was very, very similar, and there is some stuff that you're going to miss, and I think Andrea will agree to, and she even commented right there. Definitely want to read it anyway. I want to ask this question to both you, Andrea, and Nami. Nami, I want to ask you first, and this was Andrea Triggs' question. What do you think John's purpose is?
So, I was always one of the very firm believers in A Song of Ice and Fire is the title of this series. And I think Jon is the embodiment of that, since he was born of Targaryen fire and Stark ice. And I think it sounds idealistic, but I really do believe that Jon is going to sit the throne, or at least Jon is going to return the throne to somebody who should be sitting there. And I really do think that's Jon's purpose. And I think, the part of me that still loves Dany and wants her to succeed really wants her to be on the throne with Jon. And I don't know if that's going to happen with how the series is playing her right now as descending into madness, but I truly believe that Jon's purpose was to tell everyone of the Night King so that Arya could destroy him, and then to go south where he belongs as a Targaryen and sit that throne.
Okay, Andrea, I muted you temporarily because the dogs were getting a little loud. But same question for you. What do you think Jon's purpose is?
So I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, and I think that we've heard so much talk about establishing a dynasty that lasts 1,000 years, that the significance to dragons hatching and 1,000 dragons being born from it. I think we have the ability that Jon, for whatever reason, he's a fire white. He's not living, he's not dead. We don't really know how that's going to affect him, but what we do know is Sir Alexer said that he's going to be fighting their wars forever. So I think we have the potential for Jon to live a long life and then walk away at the end after his children have, grown up and, taken control of, Westeros or they've gotten it settled or whatever. I think that we're going to flash forward or whatever to Jon walking away from this family and at the throne after a certain number of years or whatever. I think that, like Beric, he's basically immortal at this point. He's not really dying unless he dies. And that's kind of Jon's kind of God's blessed like that. So I think that somewhere along the line, a dynasty that's going to last 1,000 years is going to come into it. But I think that big old dragon glass wall that popped up on the neck in the in the teaser trailer was there for a freaking reason. And if that's the case, it's a new wall, and Jon's going to rule from a dragon glass wall, basically.
Nami?
And so I also wanted to point out, Ashley Jordan just mentioned in the Get Vocal chat, the Lord of Light brought him back to sit on the throne. And I think, in a sense, that's not quite true. I think the Lord of Light definitely did bring him back to save the world from the Night King, because once again, you do see that a lot of Jon's influence. If Jon had not come back at that point, Dany's dragons would never have joined the fight against the darkness. And I think the Lord of Light was very invested in that, because that is what held off the armies long enough for Arya Lightbringer, as Andrea has pointed out now, to actually end the Night King. And I think that's very worth it for the Lord of Light.
Also, I want to just piggyback on that and say that Jon was essential to uniting the realms. Without Jon going to be the conciliator between Daenerys and the North, they wouldn't have stood a chance. So I think that John had to be that balance. That was why he was brought back. Without John, it wouldn't have happened. They would have, humanity would have died without John making that choice, going to Dragonstone, conciliating with the Targaryen queen, not knowing that was his aunt or his blood or anything like that, not knowing what he had to gain or what he had to lose, just hoping. And I think that anyone else would have not done it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was his purpose. He's the shield that guards the realms of men.
Big shout out to Carlito's Way, who gave us a shout out, saying the live stream is great. Give it a like, guys, in the YouTube. Thank you so much for that. We really try to make this as awesome as possible. And Andrea says, yes, Andrea, flash forward is what I've been thinking and hoping. Jack in the Box had a question, and I don't remember if we covered this too much in detail earlier. This was the Dany and Jon conceive. I think that Nami, you might have commented on that. Did we touch this? Did we get into that?
Yeah, I think we touched on it slightly. I said I personally don't think they did, but also I can see it being brought back as a plot device if Jon and Dany ever end up at odds, which I think is going to happen in this season sooner or later, that it might end up that they are, fighting each other, and Dany's like, oh, I'm pregnant, but I also, I don't think that's a move that she would pull, in a sense, if that makes sense. But I think the writers might use that as a device. I think it would be too late at this point. We've only got 2 episodes left, come on, they've been traveling so long. Is Jon going to come to King's Landing and Dany's just going to be sitting on the throne with a baby?
Andrea?
I think that it could pop up in the next episode, and they try to use it as a stall tactic for Dany. Dany, you're pregnant, don't go into battle. And Dany is so, like I said before, I think that she's so convinced in her prophecy that she'll never give birth to a living child, that she'll just be convinced that it's not going to live anyways. And that at that point, push Jon away. Oh, you're going to be the heir to the Iron Throne after me, blah, blah, blah. You have to, have children, have heirs, yada, yada, yada. She's going to push Jon away just because she doesn't want anybody to hold her back from her revenge at this point. So even if it is revealed, I don't know how much of a difference it will make to Daenerys at some point, other than for Jon and her advisors to try to use it as a way to stall her from acting, in any capacity, irrationally or in the moment. And so that's something that we'll just have to see. I think it's wasted opportunity to bring up the whole entire, you can have children again at some point and then not to do it. It's wasted material. But if that's the case, then they've done it a few times so far. But I hope that it happens, but I mean, if it doesn't happen, I think that doesn't mean that we won't get Jon having an heir or a baby from someone else somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it's still a possibility for Jon in the future. It just might not be with Dany.
Yeah, I don't see it happening between those two. There was also a comment. I think Ashley had a comment about Beric's purpose was when he died, and it was like that was a good ending to his arc. It was like, okay, we've been wondering, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but that just really stood out to me. Here's Beric Dondarrion. He's been a really neat character. We know he dies in the books, and spoiler if you haven't read the books. And then here he comes, and he's keeping the dead back so Arya can escape. And boom, his arc was ended. Perfect. We had Melisandre. She did her magical stuff. She took off her necklace, turned into an old hag, blew into the dust, and dropped in dead. Boom, arc ended. Sam and Gilly was a nice ending. Hey, we're going to be doing our thing. Boom, they're gone. They're not dead. They're alive. Tormund saying, I'm going north. So we're getting a lot of closure on a lot of these characters. I don't think we're going to get closure on Dany and Jon being a couple. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Biggie mentioned in the chat that Jon will have kids with one of Tormund's daughters. Kyle makes a very good point in the Get Vocal. It's crazy that there's only 2 hours and 40 minutes left of the story. It is crazy. This has been one epic adventure here. Biggie says, and Andrea Richards, that's our very own Andrea, like Varys said in the epilogue chapter of A Dance of Dragons, Aegon will wash and sew the wounds of Westeros. That was hidden meaning that George R. R. Martin gave us for Jon.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that even in the books, Jon is going to be Egan. I think that you can merge character plot lines, character arcs together, like Jorah getting grayscale, where Griff got it in the book. But you can't say, oh, Jorah, by the way, you're now Griff too. So you're going to start telling everyone your name is Griff. You know what I mean? Like you can't give an identity of a person, an actual character identity of a person to another person and expect that to go over well with the fan base who knows how important that specific character's identity is to him. So to sell us in the show, oh, his name is Egan, and then expect us to, and then tell us in the books it's something completely different would be a discredit to the show. And I think that would do them more harm than good. So yes, I do believe that Jon is Egan in the books as well. And yes, I think that anytime that Egan is mentioned in the books, we all have to think, are we really talking about Elia's child, or are we actually talking about Rhaegar's child? Because I think the actuality of it is that people confuse details with facts. And yeah, so Egan will sow he'll wash and sow the wounds of Westeros, and that's exactly what Jon's meant to do. He's meant to unite. And so it's mentioned in the World Book, and I'll make this really fast, that after the first long night, and I've said this a couple of times, that all the tribes of men, instead of staying together like they should have, they all split apart again. And so we became a warring people again. Or they became a warring people again, in different areas and different places of the earth. So then you have the Valyrians in one place, and then you have the Asha'i in another, and you have, the people of, Volantis in another, and, people of Westeros and Andalos, and all of these people, splitting all over to the different corners of the known world. And at some point, all of these people were one people, because it's believed that Planetos was a Pangea at some point. So the point was to bring everyone back together. And so then you have that Dothraki prophecy about the stallion that mounts the world. And it may be a generic prophecy that they tell every Khaleesi of a great cow, expecting that child to be the stallion that mounts the world. But the fact of the matter is they still believe that at some point it will happen. And it's important because it's basically the same thing that Jon Snow and Daenerys have to do. Daenerys basically united a whole entire continent under her, and then move them from one continent to another, where Jon Snow also had to unite an entire continent behind him to try to get them to fight against the War for the Dawn. And together, they brought those two people together. Those two people were meant to conciliate and bring the tribes of basically mankind together in order to fight the Night King. And so I think in the books, it's going to be a bigger, battle on a grand scale, because there's going to be so much more happening. But essentially, yeah, that's exactly what was being said. It's really, really interesting how many parallels to Egan and Jon there are in the books, as well as when Jon's thinking about what his father would do, and it's something that you can actually tie to something that Rhaegar actually would be in question of doing, like when he was charged with executing Ygritte and he wouldn't do it. There's a strong suggestion that Rhaegar was charged with executing Lyanna and he wouldn't do it. You see what I'm saying? So it's really interesting to see all those parallels.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a lot more about the different parallels compared to the books and the shows as soon as the series is over, because there's so many different comparisons. And I know that you've already been like going over this in your mind. I'm sure you already have notes about it as well.
Just comes all over the place. I have no idea. That sounded terrible.
So Eric had asked a question. What do you guys think about the theory that Drogon was out and about laying eggs? We talked about that earlier in the podcast or in the show. So you'll have to listen to the podcast after the fact, because we did talk about that a couple times, but we did mention that. If anyone else has any more questions, go ahead, pop them in the chat. In the meantime, and if you're listening live, you're here on BehindTheIronThrone.tv. The Facebook kind of is petering out, so if you're on Facebook, head over to BehindTheIronThrone.tv or GetVocal.com, and you'll see the room that says Behind the Iron Throne. It's a really fun app, and there's a great chat in here as well. So we talked a little bit about episode 4, episode 3, a lot of different points there. Because we're getting closer, we're going to get close to being running out of time here. Nami, what do you think so far about the entirety of what you've seen in season 8, from episode 1 to now? Are you happy with the direction we're going? Do you think it is too rushed? I know we only have so many episodes and so many hours of show content available, but are you happy so far with the direction, or are you feel like there's a lot of stuff lacking?
I mean, I've spent so much time invested in these series. I'm always going to want more out of the show. But I think, knowing that we've only got 6 episodes in this last season, everything feels rushed. I wish we could have more time with these characters. I wish we could have more moments. I wish we could slow down. I wish there was less location hopping and more time to see the characters as they journey like we did back in earlier seasons. But I also know that it is coming to an end, and I've been in this weird bittersweet haze for this entire season where I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I want more. And I think that's part of a lot of why I was not 1,000% on board with episodes 2 and 4, or was it episode 1? I don't know. Honestly, episode 1 and 2 kind of blurred together for me. Episode 3 was obviously the standout, and episode 4, like I said, was kind of a disappointment to me. But it was just one of those things that I'm in that state where I don't want to say bye to these characters. And I know we'll obviously still have the books, but because of that, it's kind of clouding every single judgment I have of the current season, because I'm watching it with this air of, oh no, it's gone, it's done. And it's very bittersweet, and I'm enjoying it, but I just wish it could last forever instead.
Yeah, I feel the same way. These characters we've invested in, and of course, 6-7 years of my life in a podcast, that was very show heavy until Andrea got here and we started really focusing on both book and show. And these characters, you see them visually, you see the different stories play out on the screen, and you really become connected and invested into these characters. As a matter of fact, when I go back and listen to the books, which I do periodically in between the Wheel of Time and Harry Potter and all other books that I love to read or listen to, when I imagine the characters, I see the people from the show. Even though we had a different description of Tyrion than we do from the HBO series, I prefer the HBO series of a lot of the characters in a lot of ways. So I kind of visualize them that, and I feel like they've been such a huge part of our lives, and it's about to be over, and that really just frosts my cupcake. I'm hoping that the spin-offs that will be coming out, I hope, will be just as good as the Game of Thrones. I think it's going to be tricky because it's an amazing show, and it's definitely spoiled me for other shows that I watch. Like when I go and I mentioned this in a previous show, when I watch like Flash and Arrow and Supergirl, which are some of my favorite shows. I love Supergirl. Those shows are cool, and like Krypton, they're not nearly as good as the Game of Thrones in terms of production wise. And just like Ashley says, yeah, the production wise, this is an incredible season, but from a story standpoint, I'm left wanting. Yeah, but the production is pretty incredible. It's going to suck when it's over, Nami. I don't know. Hopefully the prequel or whatever they're doing next comes out, and we can make an awesome podcast about it and get this audience all rassled up again. But boy, it just feels like, oh my God, it's almost over. Like, what am I going to do with my life?
I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that once this season's over, I'm just going to pull out my books again and re-dive into them. Because, wow, I read them a very, very long time ago. And then I did a reread last year before Ice and Fire Con. And I haven't touched them since. And I obviously haven't done an epic markup like Andrea has done. I do have a couple books that I have done that for. But like, I really want to go back and deep dive into the books and try to, figure out where Martin's going to go with things and try to understand and, just enjoy and rejoice in the speculation of trying to see where the book series is going to go now that we do have a conclusion to the show, and how Martin is going to keep us on the edge of our seats and how Martin is going to keep us interested when we technically do know the ending. And I know for so many book readers, obviously, like, the journey is much more rewarding than the ending, but I think it's it's exciting and interesting and compelling in a way to try to understand what Martin is going to do with his ending that's different than what the show directors have done with their ending. And I'm excited to see where that goes, but I'm still sad that such a big portion of my life with this show is ending.
Yeah. Alyssa says, we definitely all want more, but having a love for the story we have to sit back and enjoy the time we have, I think. Biggie says, at Behind the Iron Throne, we're, like it or not, Game of Thrones changed the culture globally. It's like life before and after Game of Thrones. This show changed the economy of Belfast, Spain, and Dubrovnik. I probably said that wrong. I'm going to get so much hate mail for that. Carlito says, in the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. Game of Thrones, that's up there with you come at the king, you best not miss from The Wire. Big E, this show did so much for the economy. Oh, he mentioned that already. Croatia, Belfast, some cities in Spain. Let's see. Here we have, Eric says the prequel starts in 2020. So that's not too far.
That's good.
And
That's very close. Just enough time
Big
for
E-
a comfortable binge rewatch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Biggie says, in today's TV, it's very rare to see a show to start strong and finish strong. That's decent. That doesn't happen anymore. The majority of TV shows get canceled. Yeah. Now, I don't know, Nami, if you watch Arrow.
I
Uh,
used to.
I got very disappointed with Arrow.
Me too.
I've had only one season of Game of Thrones I was disappointed in. But for the most part, it's definitely, I think it's gotten better in a lot of ways.
Let me put it this way. I am a recovering Supernatural fan.
Oh,
So, I was very invested in Supernatural, and I think I stopped watching around season 6 or 7 because that's when
did I.
things were a bit much for me. And I think, despite all the complaints that I have about the show as a book reader, like, once again, I'm going to just cite House Martell and the injustice that was the atrocity that was the Sand Snakes and the butchering of Ilaria Sand's character in terms of morality. I still have stuck with the show because I still enjoyed it. It's elevated costuming beyond something that we can think, and it's also elevated the cosplay game that has come out of it because of that. Like, this show has grown such an amazing community behind it, and I'm excited to see what we get for our, spin-off series, because I'm just proud that I have another series that I can add to the list of. It's gone through 8 seasons and it's ended on, and it seems to be so far ending on a note that makes sense and is good.
Yeah, and I was driving back from Ice and FireCon. I stopped at a rest station because it was an 8-hour drive. And while at this rest station, there was 2 gentlemen behind me, and I was standing in front of a line for what the hell was that place called? I think it was Burger King or something like that, or maybe it was Roy Rogers. And they were talking. And I could have sworn I heard them say Game of Thrones. These are completely random strangers. They weren't at Ice and FireCon. And I turned and I said, "Oh, you guys watched the Game of Thrones? Did you see season 3?" And one guy's like, "Oh yeah," and his buddy said, "Oh, I ain't seen it yet. Please don't spoil it." And he was so concerned about it. And I don't think I have ever seen an audience collectively, maybe from Lost, that was so messed up about spoilers that, and this is throughout the entire season. I used to get death threats for this podcast because of oh, you spoiled this, or you said the name wrong. And it was like, oh my God, you guys are really passionate about this show. There's no other podcast I've ever done in the 7 years of podcasting that I've got death threats except for on this fucking podcast. So that tells you that this has definitely got some feels going on. Kayleen mentions or comments that we will never see their like again. And Eric makes a comment. He will never finish the books. Do you think someone will finish them for Martin? Well, I hope he does, honestly. And I think Ashley in the Get Vocal agreed with you, Anami, about Supernatural. And I'm the same way. I stopped watching around that same time because it kind of got weird. If anyone else has any more questions, go ahead. Post them now. So if you had to rate the entire season so far, from episode 1 to 4, how many stars would you give it thus far, Nami?
That's a tough one.
It's a
'Cause,
tough one.
like I said, I'm very torn about this season because obviously I want so much more. I want the time and the depth that Martin could give us in the books, but I know that's not possible. So I think with the time that we have been given and the plot points that we have been given, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Honestly, I'd give it a 10 out of 10 just because we got Gendry and Arya anyway. So, but I'm also the worst and I love them. So that's neither here nor there. So, yeah, I definitely am going to have to hold off on a full season rating for sure until the last 2 episodes because that truly could make it or break it for me because I think a satisfying and good ending is very important. And even if it's not a satisfying ending, because I don't have to be happy with the fates of all of my characters, if it is a true ending to those characters, I think is going to be very important. So as of now, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10, and I am nervous. I'm nervous. I'm scared for all of my favorites.
That's incredible. We got some in the chat here. Oh, by the way, if anyone else would like to send me email, I want to thank you, Robert, for asking. The email is behindtheironthrone@gmail.com. And if there is hate mail, I will enjoy it very much. And the death threats, I love them. Just bring them on. They're so much fun. I'm telling you, Navi, it is you know you made it when that happens. That's when you know your podcast is getting some traction. Big E says 7.5 out of 10 so far. And if anyone's just tuning in, we're actually just kind of throwing out a number for what you rate the season so far from episode 1 to 4. Let's see. We have that's it for the YouTube, unless someone else comments there real quick. And Get Vocal, we have Kyle says 9 out of 10. And Nami, that was your rating too, right? 9 out of 10. Which I'm blown away by that. Let's see.
Let's be really fair. A lot of my rating comes from the bittersweetness of this ending. Like, I have a laundry list of faults with this season. I have a laundry list of faults with every single one of these episodes, and that's not going to change. But I think for the loose ends that they have tied up for Arya's story alone, I am happy with how this has gone. And y'all probably don't know about me, but Arya is my ultimate fave. I did a baby cosplay of Arya like years ago at San Diego Comic-Con. My dad's name is Ned, and I dressed him up as Ned Stark with me. So, like seeing her story get resolved so satisfyingly in a sense, and seeing her still go on to be my little murder child and head back to King's Landing for her little murder adventures. Just
That's funny. She could have her own spin-off book, Arya's Murderous Adventures.
Oh God.
Am I right?
Please.
I mean, if they could do the Dunk and Egg thing, they could do one for Arya. I think it'd be worth it.
Just Arya and the Hound going on murder adventures. Like, can we have it? Like, I need it.
In a heartbeat. So your dad going with you as Ned Stark, make sure you tell him he gets a gold star from Behind the Iron Throne. Gold star.
Oh, of course. He gets all the gold stars.
Now, we had some other ratings in here. Kayleen says 6, maybe 7. Carlito says 9 out of 10. Eric says 8. Robert says 8.5 out of 10. And that is it for those right now. I'm going to ask this question. We're going to pretty much wrap it up in just a minute. Andrea, do you think there is a huge disconnect between book readers and only show watchers? The book readers are upset about all the theories that didn't happen. The show watchers seem to enjoy it more. I'm going to tell you something real quick. I want to let Andrea answer this question. I am just going to be so happy if we can end the Game of Thrones show and Serial Pharrell does not show up, because then I will actually predict one thing right, and I can just push it right in Jonathan Snowmoss's face. Fuck that. I don't want to see him come back. No, thank you.
Well, about that, I don't know. Maybe not. It's a little long in the tooth for that. But yes, I think that there definitely can be a disconnect between show watchers, book purists, and show purists, for sure. And I think the problem is because a lot of people who have started with the books and moved on to the show have an idea in their head of how things absolutely should be. And so when it doesn't work out that way, they're not looking for the visual storytelling, because you don't get the inner dialogue on screen. You're never going to get that. You're never going to get the inner diva of, Daenerys Targaryen, or the broody bastard of Jon Snow, except for by his his sullen, glances. You're not going to get his inner dialogue. So of course it's never going to actually be the same on screen as it's going to be in the books. So I think that the trick is to remain objective. And so that's what I think I try to bring to our podcast, is the show watcher, book purist perspective on how you can find a way to love both and they can coexist in the same universe, because there is a way to do it, but it takes dedication and time and a lot of people telling you that you're fucking crazy and that you have a ton of tinfoil. But when you end up right, it's so rewarding.
How many times have I said, Andrea, you have way too much tinfoil? And I'm going to tell you right now, I've been so wrong so many times. I'm going to have to eat that tinfoil. I'll take it right off that hat and put it right in my mouth, because you got a lot of stuff right. And
we have
you blew my
documented
mind.
proof, though, and that's the awesome part, is that you can go back 2 years and I can find an episode where we talked about something and everyone's like, wait, hold on. Holy crap, we talked about this 2 years ago and you were right. And it's always fun for me because it's like, who would have thought, I accept the fact when I make these theories or I make these connections that I could be, just reaching too far. But whenever I get gratified with you got that right, it's just more fuel to my fire.
I'm absolutely a tinfoil fan. Like, some of my favorite Game of Thrones related panels are just absurd A Song of Ice and Fire theories. And I think it was either Dragon Con a couple years ago or San Diego Comic-Con a couple years ago. That was like the first fan-run Game of Thrones panel that I went to. And it was so funny and so satisfying. And to this day, I still occasionally will think the words Jojen paste and start laughing because it's absolutely absurd. And, but it's also great and so rewarding to see things like being in that tinfoil theory place and like being a part of that R+L=J train for so long and having that come true a couple of years ago. Like, it's just incredibly rewarding. And I think,
yeah,
exactly. It's one of those things that, like, I don't have to be right, but damn, do I love
exactly. I don't want to toot my own horn, but beep beep. Yes.
That's funny. You guys are humble, though. Yeah, I mean, I eat humble pie all the time because I get so many predictions correct, guys, don't I? Yeah, I do. Yeah, okay.
Chris,
bullshit.
I mean, you're rocking the show right now when it comes to Cersei Lannister, though. I mean, John is eating dirt right now when it comes to Team Lannister.
And I'm wearing my Lannister shirt, the same one that I wore dancing next to Aziz when we were at Ice and Fire Con. He had his shirt on too. He was trashed. I was not.
Oh, okay.
And the boy still can't dance when he's drunk. Aziz, I love you.
He's
History
dope.
of Western, awesome podcast. Alyssa says, Jojen, the original creeper. Now, you've been listening to the podcast a long time because you know that the original Dream Creeper that I hated was Jojen Reed. And Nami, I wrote a song about this creeper. And I don't remember all the words, but it went something like,
Dream Creeper.
That one too, yeah. In one of the older episodes, if anyone remembers what episode it was, let me know. BehindTheIronThrone@gmail.com. I'm too lazy to go look. If you guys can, maybe I'll rewrite a new Dream Creeper song, because that was hilarious. I used to write different songs for different characters. And
Dream Creeper 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, Electric Boogaloo. The new Dream Creeper is actually the Wheel Creeper. And we all know who the Wheel Creeper is. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. He's the one that when you turn around, and look at the You're looking at the entrance to Winterfell, and it's empty.
Everyone
there.
gives Bran such a bad rap, and I just love him so
It's
much.
terrible.
I love him
You turn
so
around and he's there,
much.
staring at you, like, "I see you.
I love that poor baby so much.
I think
I want nothing."
my favorite memes to come out of this season have been Creeper Bran and specifically like Jamie and Bran. So it's the picture of Jamie seeing Bran out of the window in season 1, and Bran is written as your life decisions 10 years ago, and then it's the reunion scene, and it's Bran again, and it's like your depression now. And the other, oh man, what was the other really good one? There was just pictures of Bran sitting sadly in the courtyard with the caption, "Somebody put wheelchair ramps. Don't leave your Bran in the cold."
Did you see the one I posted? It's like an animated GIF where it's a wheelchair guy flying through a window, and it says "sneak attack from Bran." Like out of nowhere, this guy flies into like a laundromat, and Bran comes flying in, and I'm like, "That's my wheel creeper, right there."
Amazing.
He definitely pulled that
The
off.
goodest creepy boy.
Every time you turn around, he's just sitting there, like staring, like.
No, I think that was my favorite thing in the whole entire world during episode 1 was him just sitting in the yard. I'm just waiting for an old friend. And he was there from like the moment they arrived in Winterfell. Then he's like in the hall talking to people, and then he's like back out in the yard, and then he's like outside still at the nighttime. And Sam's like, "What are you doing out?" He was like, "Just waiting for an old friend." And then he's like, "You should go talk to Jon. I'm busy," basically.
Funny.
And he was still there the next morning in the same spot, watching Lord Royce and everybody in the yard. Like, "Oh, there you are, Jamie."
And Maester.
I had this idea in my head that Bran can tell the future, but he can't tell time in relation to the future. So he was just literally sitting in the yard from the moment he had that, idea or vision of Jamie showing up. So like, was he there for weeks? Was he there for a day? Was he there for a month?
Yeah, because we don't know.
We don't know
the time frame that it took for everyone to situate themselves for Jamie to go from freaking from King's Landing to Winterfell. We have no idea how long he actually sat there. Was it days? Like, who took him to the bathroom? He was just sitting there. He was just watching everybody like a creep.
Maester Walken was pushing the the wheel creeper. Maester Walken is pushing the wheel creeper. That's
what's
right
crazy
there.
is that Maester Walken is not to be seen or heard, but like he's there randomly. Like Bran just like looks behind and like, "Come to me," and like Maester Walken's like, "Yes, master."
He just shows up.
He's just like right there with him, like, but you don't see him any other time. He's just like, so you have a wheel creeper who's got like another person creeping on him. It's weird.
The ghost snitching on the dragon memes have been really funny as well. But I don't know if you guys saw.
Oh my
They've been
god!
funny,
Yeah.
but there's okay. So I have to redact my old favorite. My new favorite is, I think I just posted it today. So it's Bran. That whole scene where Dany first gets there and Bran goes, "We don't have time for this," and they recut it so that it's like a real awkward like conversation, and then everyone's like, what? And then at the very end, like they're so tired of Bran and his goofy ass attitude that it's a wheelchair on fire rolling down the street. And I'm like, that is the fucking one right there. Go ahead, Audrey.
No. I saw it. It was hilarious. I was dying when I saw it. It was so funny.
That is the one. And Eric asks, this is going to be our final question for tonight, because we're almost out of time. Eric says, well, first we have we have Carlito saying, "My favorite is Night King dancing to Thriller." I posted that. Yes, that was a good one too. That was a lot of fun. I actually did that one when I was in the bathroom. Eric, I do a lot of my posting. I don't know if men do this only, but we do a lot of the posting in our bathroom.
Goodness.
Eric says, "Does Bran have any purpose now that the Night King is gone?" We'll ask Nami first, then Andrea, and then we're going to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We're really out of time. So keep it as short as you can. Nami, you first.
So I think Bran actually says it the best. The reason the Night King wants to kill him is because he is the history. And as much as Old Town exists, libraries can be burnt, as we know in a world of dragons. And, Bran is very much the history. And I think that's very important. And I think even if he has no active role in the story anymore, he's like the watcher and the recorder. And Three-Eyed Raven always has a purpose. His purpose is to record and to save and to preserve.
He's like the internet. He's like Google
Yes,
for Westeros.
Bran Google Stark.
Yeah, and the Weirwood Network.
The
Andrea.
Weirwood Network. Perfect.
It's true. I agree with you. Brand's purpose is to keep the records of time, and whether that's redictating them to somebody like Samuel Tarly and having them write them down or not is one thing. But what we do know about the Maesters is that their history, or what they record or what they release as far as history, is biased. And so if you need information, you can't rely on information that's biased. So that's why the history of Brandon Stark, his memory, everything he's downloading constantly, is so important. So Bran Stark will go either beyond the wall to where the Three-Eyed Raven was before, now that the Night King is gone, or he's going to go to the Isle Faces and he's going to wait for the next Brandon Stark, just like Bloodraven did before. And he'll come when he comes, you know what I mean? And until then, he'll be the Three-Eyed Raven, and he'll train the next Three-Eyed Raven when he comes. But for right now, Bran is the last Greenseer. And Brynden Rivers was the last Greenseer before Bran. So, I mean, we'll have to see.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us live at BehindTheIronThrone.tv, at GetVocal.com, and of course at Facebook.com/Behind the Iron Throne. Make sure you like our Facebook page and join our Club BTIT. If you're not a part of Club BTIT, check your pulse, because you're not alive. You got to join Club BTIT. It is one of the best places to be, where we post all these fun memes on the Facebook page and BTIT. We do play with Twitter a little bit, not that much. Twitter and I have a very bad relationship. But I want to say, if you guys want to follow me on social media, it's Chris J Gray and the number 7. And that's on anything from Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. That's where I'm at everywhere. And I also wanted to share, I forgot to mention this, I ran my first official 5K. It was a VR 5K, and it was a Game of Thrones 5K. And I got this really cool badge that you can see in the live. It says GOT, Game of Thrones, and it has all the main houses on it. And it's got this really awesome, I don't know what you call it, necklace part. It says, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And it's pretty heavy. It's substantial. And if you want to do it also, if you like to run, go to peakvirtualraces.com, and they have all kinds of different virtual races. And I only paid $20. And then, you tell them, how long you ran, 5K or whatever you want to do. You can bike, run, walk it, jump it, skip it, flip it. You can do whatever you want. But I thought this was really cool, and I'm going to collect a bunch of these and hang them here in the studio. So definitely check that out. It has all the different houses on it, and it's pretty solid. I could actually kill somebody with it. It's so heavy. So I'm really proud of that. My first official 5K ran, and I didn't die of a heart attack. Yay. Thanks to the God of tits and wine. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Do you want to do a quick shout out? And then we'll do Nami's shout out, and we're out of here.
Well, actually, I'm really just happy to be here tonight. It was really nice. You're dope, and it was a fun show. I was really happy that you were able to invite me tonight, Chris. Also, if you guys are looking for me, the best place to find me is always going to be Facebook, no matter what. I'm on the BTIC page all the time. And you can always email me, Andrea Richards. You can find me on Twitter, Andrea_Richards637. Also on Instagram, though I'm not really on social media like that, except for Facebook. So best place to find me is Facebook. Other than that, I will be back with you next Tuesday, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And I look forward to that conversation, that special show. I want to be invited to that with you, Nami.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
That would be dope.
You'll be there for sure. Nami, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Where can people find you? Any shout outs?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Andrea. It was great meeting with you and great chatting with another book fan. I got to get on your level, clearly. So you guys, I can be found at Nekonami Cosplay for most social medias. I'm on there. That's me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's also my email at gmail.com. I'm going to link my Insta in the Get Vocal. That's where I'm actually most active. A lot of cosplay stuff. In case you guys haven't been able to tell, I am very much a Dorne lifelong fan. This is my Ilaria Sand cosplay, and I'll hopefully be doing a lot more Game of Thrones cosplays. Probably going to have a season 8 Sansa coming up, because I love her armor look. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Chris. Andrea, thank you so much for being a great conversationalist and helping make this an awesome experience. And I want to give a shout out to Ice and Fire Con, which is the reason Chris and I were able to meet and get this podcast bug started.
yes. I'm going to bribe Nami to get her back on the podcast as many times as I possibly can. I know she's very busy with grad school, but I'm going to try. I'm trying to get her on as many podcasts to get her the podcast bug so I can get her here as much as possible. And I also put a link to your Instagram in the behindtheironthrone.tv. So I want to thank all my co-hosts for being here. I want to thank everyone for joining us live, and we'll see you next time this coming Tuesday or Monday. Yes, Monday. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. For this next episode, we'll be live, YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. We love you guys. #BTIT, Behind the Iron Throne. Woo! Nami in the house. Woo! Okay, and the live